Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lesson 5 on Prosperity, the book written by Charles Fillmore. Everybody's looks a little different. Mine's kind of old school on that. I'm Reverend Wally White. I'm with Unity in Greensboro. And let's get the introductions of my co-teachers and ministers here. Christina.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christina Garza. I am the minister at Unity of Nashville, and so excited to be with you all and talking about this so underrated book, I think.
Absolutely. Christina, it's so good to see you today. And it's so great to see everybody else that's joining us. I'm Reverend Todd Humphrey. I am with Crystal Coast Unity in Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. We are, as Wally said, we are reading Prosperity by Charles Fillmore. And we want to remind you that we want you to comment, to interact, share what's working for you, what yes, and when there's a no, when there's like, oh, I don't know that I believe in that. Give us some feedback because we want to hear that. We want to know that you are engaged in this incredible study of truth. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This really works. Like Charles teaches good information here. We have some good conversations that comes hopefully get some other good information, but this really works the best if anybody that is watching this becomes an active student as opposed to a viewer. And so that's where this is our way of testing a new or maybe different way of doing a class by doing it virtually and the students participating in the comment section. And so we hope that you will do that and let's have some great conversations together. So let's see what lesson 5 has to say. Reverend Christina, are you going to start reading for us?
Absolutely. So, lesson 5 is the law that governs the manifestation of supply. And so, just to give you all a heads up, we'll be stopping from time to time when something resonates. If Reverend Wally or Reverend Todd find something that's like, wait a minute, pump the brakes, we need to process this one, then y'all just go ahead and jump in. All right. So, here we go. It is safe to say that all men are striving to fulfill the law of their being, but few have understood the law. The law is one of the most important things we can study because only as we come to understand it and in proportion as we understand it can we comply with its requirements and demonstrate our divine possibilities through it. In reading the scriptures, we gradually raise our consciousness of them as mere history and begin to apprehend them as setting forth the principle or law of life. We find the great Bible characters fitting into the pattern of our own consciousness, where they represent ideas. This makes the Bible a divine book of life rather than merely the history of a people. The idea of the law is symbolized by Moses. In our individual consciousness, he is denial, the negative side of the law that precedes its affirmative expression. Moses gave the law as thou shalt not. Jesus represents the law in its affirmative expression. Thou shalt love Lord like thy God. Moses could not go into the promised land, the four-dimensional state of consciousness, for there can be no negation there. Joshua, whose name has the same meaning as that of Jesus, entered the promised land and opened the way for the children of Israel. He represents the first step in mind toward that full consciousness of the omnipresence and omnipotence of God that was attained in Jesus. Moses was a lawgiver, and Jesus was, in his own words, the fulfillment of the law. We must begin to see this four-dimensional world within, with its innate capacity for all things. Everything is right here, all that ever was or ever could be, simply waiting to be brought forth into manifestation. The Lord has prepared a great feast and invited all of us to it, just as Jesus explained in parable. We have right here within and all around us this substance ready for our appropriation or eating. Eating is the outer symbol of mental appropriation. We begin to break bread by breaking the substance of mind everywhere abundantly provided. And I want to underscore that one because I just love this kind of idea of the eating. We begin to break bread by breaking the substance of mind everywhere abundantly provided. We have discovered that there is within us a life force that can be quickened into greater activity by thinking. Everyone has at some time demonstrated that he could overcome the negative condition of weakness by holding the thought of strength. Sometimes the strength follows the thought immediately. Sometimes the thought must be persistently held for days or weeks. In demonstrating the law of ever present abundance, we should do expect the same results. We should and do expect the same results. If the demonstration seems slow in coming, patience and persistence will win. That might be because the poverty consciousness has a tenacious hold and takes effort to be got rid of. Maybe we can stop there because I think this is a good place maybe to take some of this to tackle. What do you all think about this, or maybe stories in terms of, he talks about if you have a sense of weakness holding strength and having to need patience around this, or how demonstrations actually can be performed. So thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I like the correlation between how food works in our bodies to nourish our bodies, and how our thoughts work in those same ways to nourish our minds, which is also nourishing our bodies. And we see it as the output in what we're doing. So I love that correlation of using that to show that it's like, hey, this is all about the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything additional to add to that. Tell us more what you're thinking about, Christina.
Yeah, so I love this idea that, the metaphor, the symbolism of eating, and like Wally said, it's a really beautiful way to think about it. And even with thoughts, ideas, if we have these low vibrational thoughts, if we have these negative thoughts, if we have all of this, it's like, I love me some hot chip Cheetos. I really do. But, is that the equivalent of me having a kale salad? No, it's not, right? And so it's sort of the same idea, like how do we nourish our bodies in that way with the same, with thoughts, with words, to be able to achieve the quote unquote results that we want, right, in our lives. And so he's challenging us to really think about the ways in which we live our lives and to be able to replace some of these things. So if we have thoughts of ourselves as not worthy, if we have thoughts of ourselves as lacking, if we have thoughts of ourselves as poverty stricken, like our finances are low, then how do we replace that? We replace that with other thoughts and work those, and so however we do them, whether through affirmations or through prayer or through meditations, or different ways in which we work the practice, but he's suggesting to us that we need to do that. And on top of that, I always say we live in a fast food culture, right? So we want to go through the manifestation drive through and be like, I want to get me some, some abundance. And it doesn't work that way. He's saying you have to be patient, you have to be persistent. Unity folks, as well as most spiritual folks, we don't do well with the concept of discipline, but that is a key idea. I always say you're not going to start out the gate and run, a Boston Marathon. It's like that persistence, that discipline, that everyday practice. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's really exercising that, the power of faith, and like the discipline that comes along with that. And like discipline becomes one of those words that we don't like from childhood, because that meant not getting to do what we wanted to do, right? Or whatever. But this is a being like, no, like patience, discipline, faith is all in saying a way of saying, like, I am insisting on my very best. And even though it's not right in front of me in this very second, I'm hanging on to that expectation because I believe that this is like is what I'm worthy of. It's what I absolutely deserve. And but I can't stomp around and say, well, I want it because I deserve it, and I've not put the work in to at least sit and think and paint the pictures in my mind so that there is an invisible to become visible.
Yeah. And even the idea, just these things like poverty consciousness runs deep, right? So it really takes that discipline, it takes that effort, it takes that work to undo all of the mental constructs, the mental models, all of the energetic, whatever you want to call it, that is surrounds all of the things that we've been preconditioned to think and believe. Todd, you
That's
want to add anything else? If not, I'll go on.
No, let's continue. Let's
All
continue.
right.
Thanks.
Well, there is a law that governs the manifestation of supply, and we may learn that law and apply it by mental determination and faith in the logical sequences of spiritual realities. We have thought that the laws of God were mysterious and sacred, far removed from the ordinary individual, and that we had better try first to learn the laws of food, of medicine, of 1,000 other secondary things. A strict metaphysician looks at all of these temporal laws as secondary to the one law of God. That one law, we are told, is to be written in our hearts, our inward parts. Then there is something within us that naturally responds to the law of God. If we accept this as true, that we know the one law by an inner intelligence and that all other laws are secondary to it, we are in a position to get results to demonstrate prosperity. In the natural world, about us, we see that everything is governed by law. We are told that the whole animal kingdom is guided by instinct. Many theories have been advanced to explain instinct in terms of material thought. Some philosophers have stated that it is something handed down from one generation to the next, incorporated in germ cells. Whether this is true or not, there is evidence that there is a law either in or around cells that controls their formation and duplicates the pattern laid down ages ago in Mother Eve and Father Adam. This is the law written in our inward parts, which is not a figure of speech but a recognized fact. We must look within for the law and not without. The laws we find in the outer are the secondary laws. The infinite creative mind has given to every one of us a key to the workings of this unfailing inner law. It is that everything we touch mentally or physically represents substance and that it is limited only by ourselves in our thought capacity. We cannot ask God for more substance, for the universe is full of it. We can and should ask for understanding to lay hold of it with our mind. That is, for an increase in our capacity. Back of the substance is the substance idea, and man is related to the cause side of this idea through his oneness with God. You may think that you could live better and do more good if you had lots of money. Things would not be a bit better with you if you had $1,000,000, unless you also had the understanding to use it for the good of yourself and others. Would you give a child $1,000,000 to go buy candy and ice cream for himself? We must evolve with our possessions until we get the ability to handle them. Then the law is fulfilled. The supply unfolds at the same rate as the need or ability to use substance is developed. Let us realize this law of unfolding substance and get busy to fulfill it in ourselves by developing our understanding and appreciation of it. We should pray for just as much each day as we need or can handle. Give us this day our daily bread is a prayer that conforms to the divine law and answers itself. Y'all want to go in on the $1,000,000?
Heck yeah, I'll take $1,000,000 right now. But no, I mean, I do love I forget the time elements, but there's a story about a man, and it's my understanding this is a true story, that there was a man who won a lottery, and in a short period of time, lost all of it, and then turned around and won the lottery again, and then in a short time lost all of it again, because he never took the time to get his mind right about being the millionaire that he had become. And so in his mind, he was still the hundredaire, shall we say? I don't know where he was on that. And so his mind had to equalize out to his physical experience. So it does take that part of making the decision to change your mind about how you're going to use stuff. And, because I love that example of would you give a kid $1 million and send him into a candy store? Of course you wouldn't, right? But there's an inner child in us. So what are we going to allow our inner child? Sometimes it's great to let him out, let him have fun and enjoy that. Sometimes it's like, yeah, we need the adult to hold the hand of my inner child right now.
Mhm.
It's an interesting concept.
It, I one of my mentors many years ago told me, Todd, you can have a yacht, you can manifest a yacht, but to keep the yacht, you have to become in consciousness the kind of person that has and keeps a yacht. And I always come back to that idea that it's, if I don't have a firm understanding of what I'm going to do with $1 million, I'm not going to have $1 million, right? And the other thing is, I recently was reading another prosperity book from I can't think of the author's name. It's you can find it on truthunity.net if anyone's interested as a PDF. But sometimes we storm the gates of heaven demanding our good without using the good we've already been given.
Mhm.
Right? We and this idea of, have we used what we already have?
Mhm.
And if we haven't, then we're not going to be able to attract the $1 million and keep the $1 million, because we don't have that mental capacity prepared on how to handle it all, what we're going to do with it, and how we already use what we have, the good that we've already received.
Mhm. You made me think of the Edwene Gaines book. And when she talks about, one of my favorite parts of her book is when she talks about how she first started in all this prosperity work. And, she was like down on her luck and, like a financial hot mess. But something within her wanted to go to Mexico. And that she went to the store and she bought all these really like floofy things, like for, these tropical type drinks and little kind of appetizers that she thought. She had almost no money, but she was dedicated to kind of doing this little thing. And her bestie, hung out in the backyard. There's no pool, of course, but the pretend water and their little broke down lawn chairs or whatever. And they're having this experience, right, of like pretending to be in Mexico in this like glorious, tropical whatever. And the idea of sort of again expanding the consciousness to be able to prepare yourself to receive it. Like part of it is like training our brain to be receive it, to feel ourselves worthy of it, to feel like in that moment. And then gratitude, right? So she reminds herself that that moment was also a moment of gratitude with her best friend and just having fun and being frivolous and just enjoying each other's company and life and where they were. It was in Mexico, but they were enjoying where they were. And then she says, lo and behold, this huge windfall of circumstance and money and opportunity and resources came, and she found herself shortly thereafter in Mexico and actually living what she had already practiced in her mind. And I always think about that. So, we have to begin first visioning that for ourselves and really feeling like deserving of it. you know?
Yeah, and and that's where we use our power of imagination and understanding, because it's like, all right, I want to manifest a big house. It's like, okay, you absolutely can do that. Let's start by thinking about, like, without saying it has to be, right? You want this or more, because you don't want to get yourself tied up in, like being like, no, if it's not exactly like this, then it's not it. But you do want to say, I want to live basically in this city or in this part of town. I like to be able to walk to the downtown area, or I want to be as far in the country as I don't want to see a house for my, like getting those feelings of like, what does it look like? What is it like? How does it function for you in the way that makes you happy? And the house is just an easy example for that, but it's really in all the stuff. I thought of the example, but I'd rather tell it later because it's a longer example. But Della Reese had this really great lesson that she taught us of when she had bad relationships and had chosen to be celibate. And then when she decided, okay, I'm ready for a partner in my life again, like the process that she went through, she didn't just say, hey, I'm going to start dating and hop on an app. There weren't apps that, but like she literally sold her big bed and made room in the room for her partner to have room in the bedroom, and things that she did because she was preparing for it. And so I love that question around whenever you talk about the Christmas story with the pregnancy of Mary, of like, what metaphysically, the lesson here is, what are you ready to give birth to? And when you give birth to those divine ideas, you allow them to go from your mind out into the world, then also treating it like an infant that still needs some care from you as it grows into being the full living, breathing, idea that you're being blessed by and is blessing others.
Mm-hmm. So, people, what are you ready to give up today? What are you ready to make room for in your life today? Put it down on the chat if there's something, relationships, opening yourself up to abundant relationships. What are some really simple steps, really simple acts or symbolic acts that you can do in your life to be able to open up those channels of flow? So, question, who knows?
I love it.
Anything, Todd? We're moving on. Does someone else want to take the baton and read? Or shall I go? Want to go?
Uh, yeah, go ahead and go for another couple of pages.
Okie
Thanks.
dokie. Infinite Mind has a lawful way for providing its children with supply for all their needs. Nothing is left to chance. God feeds the birds of the air and clothes lilies of the field, and he will feed and clothe us unless we make it impossible by our refusal to accept his bounty. Paul said that the fulfilling of the law is love. That is exactly what we must do: love the Lord and love our neighbors as ourselves and love our work. The law is there and in our inward parts and in our very heart. We know what to do. We don't have to pray or beg for God to give us anything. All we need to do is to meditate quietly and affirm the presence and power of the great giver of all, and then accept the gifts. To be true to the law is to stop looking to the without and to look within for supply. Looking to the within means fixing the mind on God as an ever present spirit that is also substance and power. Wrapped up within each of us is a great richness of thoughts. These thoughts are prisoners in the subconsciousness, only waiting to be set free to go to work for us. They are waiting for the coming of the Son of God, who releases the prisoners and sets the captives free. This Son is now seeking expression in you. Is you. Release your rich thoughts, set free your innate powers, and take from the rich substance of the Father what you will. Through faith in the overcoming power of Jesus Christ, the Son's mind will be overcome and the spiritual mind brought into control of your life and affairs. The sense mind is filled with lacks and limitations. The spiritual mind only knows limitless abundance. You are linked with the universal spiritual mind through the Christ mind. It is through the Christ mind that all things come to you. It is the channel to the all mind of the Father. Make the unity of wholeness with the Christ mind. Hold that you are master with the master, one with the all-providing substance, and that your prosperity runneth over. As you begin this process of unifying yourself consciously with the inner life and the substance, it will begin to well up within you and to overflow into your affairs so that you will be prosperous. Remain true to this inner outer appearance may be, and you cannot help but bring the good things of life into manifestation. All the manifest substance flows from a realm of light rays, light waves, according to the findings of modern physical science. James says, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. This is an exact statement of a scientific law, even to the use of the plural form of the word lights. For as science states, one or more light particles, electrons, form the atom that is the basis of all material manifestation. God ideas then are the source of all that appears. Accept this as an absolute truth, an all-productive truth, and consciously connect your mind with the Father mind. Then you will begin to realize the never-failing prosperity that comes from being itself. The German philosopher and poet Goethe says, the highest and most excellent thing in a man is formless, and we should guard against giving it shape in anything less than noble dress. This is a recognition of the truth that man has a capacity within himself to give form to the formless substance. Jesus expressed the law by saying, whatever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. This heaven is the realm of pure ideas and mind. We are constantly incorporating these ideas into our mind and giving them form and shape according to our loyalty to the truth. I'll pause there.
Yeah, I kept thinking during that last part that you were reading, Christina, about how we encourage people to stay in the now, to really enjoy and appreciate and use the now. But I think that when looking at this concept, that there's, when they say hindsight is 2020, like there's this thing that you just thought, I need this way, I need this job, I need this partner, I need this, and it doesn't happen.
Been there.
Yeah. And and it didn't happen. And in the moment it seemed heartbreaking that it wasn't working out the way that you thought it was. And then you get further down the road and you look back and you're like, oh, because that didn't happen, this did happen. What is that? I think is a good question for all of us. We never want to sit around just living and thinking in the past and, like visit it. Don't try and move into it. That's where you're going to get real upset because you actually can't move into it. You can visit in your mind. You just can't live there. And, but I worked a couple of jobs that I did not want to work, telemarketing jobs. But I have some lifelong friends years and years later that I'm still in contact with, even though I moved on to other jobs that I did like. And, so that's one that I know. And I think that's a question that I would ask for people who are watching now, right now, to put in the comments, is there something that you can use in retrospect to be like, oh, I'm so happy things worked out the way that it did. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, I was just talking to someone today. It's so funny that you should say that because he was telling me he's a photographer, and a pretty well-known photographer and part of our congregation. He was saying how years ago he was looking to photograph a particular music artist, and he went to an event with that in mind. Like, he was obsessed with this artist, and he's like, I got to photograph her. And so he went to this event with that in mind, and things happened that he wasn't able to do that. And he met someone at that event who gave him entree to another gig and to photograph, to do something else. And so he goes there, and it's an amazing gig with, you know, all these folks that are big in the, you know, celebrities and music and in movies and such. But he's still looking for this woman. Like, he's like, no. So he's totally missing out on everything that's going on, who's there, because he's so obsessed with finding her. Long story short, it ends up being through these series of events where he's looking for this other woman. He ends up getting this string of connections where he ends up being able to do this amazing, like, year or two photographic project on Broadway with the first full African American cast that did a Broadway production. And so he was saying, and he never met the woman, and he ended up never photographing her. But because he was so obsessed, like, he thought that was his end game, and he ended up having this amazingly crazy career. And so, you know, it's so funny that you say that, because we sometimes obsess about, like, this is going to make me happy. This is what I need in my life. And we just, if we're just listening, following kind of that guidance, taking those next steps, then we're led to, you know, our true abundant living in a way that may have nothing to do with what we think should be.
Yeah.
Y'all had experiences personally with that?
You know, the most immediate one that comes to my mind is, you know, I lived in Greensboro for 16 years, and then moved up to the Manhattan area because I thought I was a city boy, and I had decided when I was 17 years old that I would be on Broadway one day. And I eventually was on Broadway, and I gave a message from a Broadway stage, but I was working in an institution that, quite frankly, really didn't want to be a church. And I went to work one day, and my job had been eliminated. And it felt like the worst thing ever that had happened, but I really wanted to be in congregational ministry. And, you know, this opportunity opened up for me. And so I came back to North Carolina, to a different city in North Carolina, and rented my apartment the week before COVID hit. So I'd been, you know, and so everything worked out in this just divinely ordered, very safe way for me as everything shut down. I mean, I had, you know, friends in the Manhattan area who did not survive COVID, and I got out of the city and wasn't there, and everything, you know, in this desire of what I wanted and what I you know had imagined. It's much, you know, my prosperity is, you know, I don't make the paycheck's not what I was making when I was living up north, but you know what? The prosperity of my life has quadrupled. I love my life now. And so that's really wonderful for me. So,
and you live by the ocean too, right?
and yes, I live by the ocean, and the skies are always beautiful, and you know, amazing wildlife. You know, I can walk out and see dolphins.
Wow.
It's a little cold right now, but yeah, I mean, it really is amazing how all of it eventually turned out. And yet I still come back frequently to this idea that, you know, when I was 17 and I decided I was going to be on Broadway, and, you know, it did take 30 years to happen, but I was on Broadway. So,
yeah, I mean, setting goals and setting intents and working towards those intentions are all really important and valuable. And then also allowing it to be that or better, and accepting that your highest and best is always working in your favor and is always ready for you to have it. That often, I wanted to say may mean way more than may, likely will mean that the final picture of it is going to look different than we thought on our own, because the highest and best has other angles that we're just not even seeing from our perspective yet. But it's still so important to set goals and then go about achieving those goals and see where, and sometimes you're going to land straight on it and do just that. More times than not, for often it's going to feel like you missed the mark. But if you just keep allowing yourself to breathe and move forward, you're either going to find out, oh, there was this other amazing thing that I wouldn't have gotten to had this not shut down. Or because I went after this, like your photographer friend, I then shot over into this amazing thing that I wouldn't have even thought to pursue. But because I got myself into the world, you know, the shoot for the moon and you'll be amongst the stars, because I got myself into that area that I wanted to be, like other things that I hadn't even thought of showed up in its own way.
Mhm. I love that you were saying, it's sort of like honoring that process, right? Like setting up this idea, this process, like setting the goals, setting the path, and allowing yourself to change your mind. You may get there. And I think that's sometimes a hard pivot for a lot of us, right? Where we have this, like, for example, you, Todd, if you would have like, I got to Broadway and it's like, well, this is what I said I wanted my whole life. This is what I want. This is what I'm supposed to do. And then, but you're there and you're like, well, I did it. Like now I'm okay. And then you try to push it on it and it's not fulfilling to you or it's not satisfying you anymore, or what have you. And most of us cling, don't we? Like we're like holding on for dear life. Like this is what we're supposed to do forever because we've worked so hard to it. And, part of this spiritual growth process is also being open to change, like being open to saying, this is not working for me, and having the courage to say that and to do
Yeah,
something different.
Well,
absolutely.
decided when I was 17 I was going to be on Broadway and go to New York. Well, you know what? It turns out I'm not a city boy. That was too much frenetic energy, too much busyness, too much noise,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
And it gave me, my time there gave me this incredible skill set. I developed all these other new abilities. It was a great experience. It served me.
Yeah.
And in that way, it has helped launch me into this new experience of prosperity.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that is so much more than just finances, right? I get my daily bread.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I get
Mhm.
my daily bread. So
Beautiful. Does someone want to pick up where I finished?
Yeah, I can read. Let me make sure I'm going to the right place. We're on 77, starting with the in our human understanding. Is that correct?
I thought we were, let's see.
What's that?
I'm sorry. I
Are we
lost myself here.
76 to every metaphysician?
to every metaphysician on 76. Yeah.
Yes.
That's where we are.
Yes.
Yes.
That's why I asked, because, I
And
it,
while you start reading, y'all excuse me, because speaking of daily bread, my precious puppy is staring at me and she's like, it's time for my dinner. So I'm going to fix her bowl and I'll be right back while you
all
read.
right. While
Sounds
she
good.
eats, we will eat up this information.
So y'all know this is live, right? We're just rolling, got the dog, got everything going on. So this is
Yeah.
for real.
Okay, so to every metaphysician, this is a very important and very delicate process, because it is through this that we develop our soul. This soul development is often compared to the development of the photographic plate. The light puts the image on the sensitive plate in the first place, or as James says, it is a gift from the Father of lights. There is then an image on the plate, and it is invisible and unmanifest until it goes through the developing process. Infinite mind has imaged all its attributes in the soul of every man. But man must develop this image into the clear picture, and much of that work must be done in the dark with perfect faith in the law of manifestation. The photographer works in the dark room. How cool is that you were just talking about a photographer? Okay. The photographer works in the dark room, putting the plate through many processes. Sometimes the developer may make an error in some of the operations and the plate will come out with an imperfect image. So the human manifestation sometimes seems distorted, but the image of perfection imprinted by the creative mind is there. This perfect image is Christ in you, the hope of glory. Our body and affairs are first proofs of the development of the picture, but floating in our mind are the higher ideas, the real image to be developed. Our mind is engaged more or less in a chemical process. It is hard to find a line of demarcation between physical and mental chemistry, for they follow the same law. However, what has been imaged can be brought out by the proper method of development. Whatever you image yourself as doing, you can do. In our human understanding, we have divorced this imaging power of the mind from the executive power. Now let us bring them together and unify them. For when imagination and will work together, all things are possible to man. The will is symbolized in scripture by the king. King Solomon was probably the world's richest man, and insofar as the world is concerned, he was a great success. He demonstrated prosperity. He did not ask God for riches. Let us note that carefully. He asked God for wisdom for ideas. God is mind, and his gifts are not material but spiritual, not things but ideas. Solomon asked for and received the ideas and then developed them himself. Because he was wise, all the world came to his court seeking wisdom and bringing riches in exchange for it. The king of Tyre brought the material he needed to build the temple. The queen of Sheba brought him great quantities of gold. From this, we should get our cue. Ask God for rich ideas, aka substance, and then put them to work in our affairs. Do not hesitate to use the divine ideas that come to you, but do not forget their source or foundation. There are many people who are very attractive executors. The moment they get an idea, they make use of it, but sometimes they do not get far because they forget the foundation on which the ideas rest and from which we must start to build. With a foundation of truth, of spiritual ideas and substance, we can build an enduring structure of prosperity. It will not be based on a false premise. It will stand when the rains descend and the floods come and the winds blow and beat upon it. We do not desire prosperity today and poverty tomorrow. We should seek for the steady, day-by-day realization of abundant supply. Jesus understood and used this law of forming the formless substance by the power of imagination and will. When the woman touched the hem of his garment, some of this substance of which he was vividly conscious flowed to him and healed her. He immediately remarked that someone had touched him. Many had touched him in the throng, and no substance had left his body from those contacts. But the woman of faith was open to receive the healing substance, and consciousness appropriated it. This proved her faith, and Jesus told her to be of good cheer, for her faith had made her whole. The same substance was available to others who crowded against him, but only the one who recognized it and laid hold of it achieved it. Even so, you and I shall receive no benefit, although substance is everywhere around us and in us, unless we recognize its presence by faith and lay hold of it by the hem of its garment outer expression. Let's see. Jesus recognized the
I want to
Yeah.
I want to interrupt and just underline something in that for everyone, and in your books underline it maybe, but you know, Jesus said, "Be of good cheer, for her faith had made her whole."
Right.
And I think that is so important because so much of our theology in the world will say that, you know, that Jesus did this for this woman. But Jesus himself says, you have done this through your faith. Right? It's
Right.
Jesus awakened within her, and she healed herself with her faith. And that is available to all of us when we know who we are, when we have that faith rooted in the truth of who we are, and see rightly. And I just I love that that is in here, because that is part of our prosperity. In order to receive, we must know who we are, and we must, as Christina said in the last time we had this had a conversation, we have to be ready to receive. Right? We have to do the mental work to be ready to receive, to appropriate that substance that we might have our prosperity. Nobody's going to do it for us.
Yeah, this lesson really is about making room in our minds first, about setting the plans and making plans, and then being willing for those plans to have some flexibility, and so that the greater thing that maybe we wouldn't have thought of can allow itself to be seen. But it starts by setting out the intention, by saying, oh, I don't like where I am in fill in the blank, the job, the house, the whatever. And then the question is then, well, then what do you want? Use that negative feeling just long enough to use it as a traffic signal to be like, oh, that's a stop sign. I'm not enjoying this. Which other direction maybe would I enjoy? Let me start thinking in those terms. Let me find something in it. Like, that's really what keeps coming up in this lesson. It's about making that space first here. That that our famous sayings like change your mind, change your life. That's not just this is how that works. It becomes a cute saying because it's short and something you can go to remember, but it's powerful. If you will change your mind about something that you don't think is working right, you will change your life around that issue.
Yep.
Love it.
Yep. Thanks for letting me interrupt right there.
Yeah.
We're back on 79 at the top.
Okay. Jesus recognized the omnipresence of substance when he laid hold of it to multiply the loaves and fishes. He dwelt in a consciousness of it at all times. Once he told the apostles when they asked him to eat, I have meat to eat that ye know not of. He built this divine substance into his body, cell by cell, replacing the mortal flesh with the spiritual substance, until his whole body was immortalized. He demonstrated it and told us how it was done. He said, he that believeth on me, the works that I do, shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do. Then why are so many people poor, distressed, ill, or troubled? There is a way, a law, and a wisdom to apply the law, and there is an abundance of substance waiting to be formed by each of us into whatsoever we will when we apply that law as a son of God. There is an inherent faculty that instinctively lays hold of what it calls its own. Even little children like to have their own toys and to keep them separate from those of other children. There is nothing to be condemned in this, for it is the natural outworking of divine law. It proves that we know somewhere in our deepest being that we have been provided from the foundation of the world and are entitled to our own portion without question. The power of mind to draw to us those things to which we are divinely entitled is a power that can be cultivated and should be. I'm going to read that sentence again. The power of the mind to draw to us those things to which we are divinely entitled is a power that can be cultivated and should be. We are now on the verge of a new state of mind in matters financial. Let us do away with the erroneous idea that men must be poor to be righteous. Money is man's instrument, not his master. Money was made for man, not man for money. Only those who put money above man and give it power in their minds by worshiping it are the rich men to whom Jesus referred in his story about the camel and the needle's eye. It is not money that controls men, but the ideas they have about money. Ideas of poverty are just as powerful to enslave men as the ideas of wealth. Every man should be taught how to handle ideas rather than money, so that they serve him rather than have dominion over him. Some physical scientists are telling us that the time is near when men will manufacture from the ether right at hand everything they need or desire. Man will not have to wait for seed time and harvest when he learns to use the power of his mind. When we have the consciousness in which our ideas are tangible, all our demands will be quickly fulfilled by the higher law. Throw into your ideas all the life and power of your concentrated thought, and they will be clothed with reality. Let's talk about that. I love that last sentence here too. Throw into your ideas all the life and power of your concentrated thought, and they will be clothed with reality. Like, isn't that ultimately what we're always talking about with manifestation? I think the word manifestation often gets caught up in this misnomer about money, about wealth, about all, and then wealth can be something that, like, look, wealth when it's with money is awesome. We should all have as much of it as comes our way. We should say yes to it. We should have fun with it. We should use it to, help other people. But there's nothing bad about the money. But you can have $0 and feel incredibly wealthy if you were cold and you just made it to a park bench on a nice, warm, sunny day and feel the wealth of that sun and that warmth and that, right? So it's all about the state of mind first of deciding, I don't care what the outer proof is right now. I am fully prosperous.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said earlier that I think underscores one thing that you just read about. It's sort of like the idea that we have to really, it all begins in the mind. And so earlier on, it says, every man should be taught how to handle ideas rather than money. And that's such a powerful concept. It's such a powerful statement because it goes back to this thing. We're so focused on money in our culture. We live in a capitalist, consumerist culture, right? And so money is the supreme. That is what delineates whether you are successful or not. I mean, whether we realize it or not, that really what it is, what kind of the undercurrent of our thought. And so we put this idea of money as how we determine our worth. Money, how much we have or don't have, determines our worth. What we possess materially, the car, the house, keeping up with the Joneses, all those kinds of things, whether we realize it or not, we do that. Or the opposite. We're still focused on money and being like, I'm not going to be that person, so I'm not going to have necessarily anything. Or we criticize or judge people that do have those things, whether we don't even know what they're doing with that money. And I love in scripture the one I can't, when he there's the short in stature gentleman who Jesus, he goes up into the tree to be able to see Jesus, and he's a tax person, and so says that he's going to go have dinner with him, and the people are just, totally verklempt that, oh my God, he's going to go with this toxic guy, this guy that's the oppressor, to go break bread with him. And the reality is, we don't know what he does with that. We don't know that if he's the biggest philanthropist, that there is. So it's like we make assumptions about people. So I think the important thing here is to, like, we have to challenge our own beliefs about what we've been taught. We have to start unraveling those ideas and begin opening, right? The renewal of the mind, to be able to allow for that God mind to really have its way with us.
Yeah.
I love how you put that, Christina.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's beautiful because it is about, like, you got to know that you know what you know. But in that, you also have to leave room to continue to expand, because we don't ever stop learning new stuff. That doesn't mean that that you don't still want to know that you know what you know, but you got to grow from there instead of, like, holding yourself there.
Right.
Our mind is a powerful, powerful thing. But I do too love that statement of that people should be taught how to handle their ideas more so than how to handle their money. I think being taught how to handle your money is good, but like letting your ideas, like, recognizing the power in your ideas, as opposed to being like, oh, he's a dreamer. Yes, I am. So
That's right.
awesome. Todd, do you feel like reading some, or shall I continue?
You can go ahead and continue if you don't mind.
Okay.
My eyes aren't great tonight. I don't know if it's the light. Maybe I might need a stronger prescription now. Bigger readers.
I hear you. All right. So at the bottom of page 80, it says, when Jesus went into the wilderness of his then untried mental powers, he was tempted to turn stones into bread. We all have had these temptations, and most of us have succumbed to it. We get our bread out of material things, stones, instead of out of the words that proceed from the mouth of God. It is the word, the idea, that feeds the soul of man. That is admitted. But we must realize that it is the word, the idea, that feeds the body and the affairs of man also. For unless the word is recognized and appropriated, there is a lack of the true substance, and there is no satisfaction in the food. Fortunately, the Father knoweth that we have need for all these things, and in his compassion and mercy, he feeds us with the substance even while we still try to assimilate the stones. If we would seek first the kingdom of God, the substance, that the things would be added, and we should consciously enjoy the fullness of living the abundant life of Jesus Christ. There is a universal law of increase. It is not confined to bank accounts, but operates on every plane of manifestation. The conscious cooperation of man is necessary to the fullest results in the working of this law. You must use your talent, whatever it may be, in order to increase it. Have faith in the law. Do not reason too much, but forge ahead in faith and boldness. If you let yourself think of any person or any other outer condition as hindering your increase, this becomes a hindrance to you, for you have applied the law of increase to it. Fear of it may cause you to become timid and bury your talent, which defeats the law. Keep your eyes on the abundant inner reality and do not let the outer appearance cause you to falter. Do not give too close study to yourself or your present condition. To dwell in mind upon the seeming limitations only prolongs their stay and makes your progress slow. A child loses sight of everything but his increase in size. The boy sees himself as a larger boy, even as a man. It is a childlike mind that finds the kingdom. Then look ahead to the perfect man you are to be in the spirit and behold yourself as the beloved son in whom the Father is well pleased. God gives the increase. We are told in the scripture. This is to be remembered, for we so often think that increase is the result of our personal effort. Increase comes from the operation of a universal law, and our part is to keep that law. Use the talent of life, and it will expand wonderfully. You do this by talking about life, praising it, and giving God thanks for it. Act as though you were alive and glad to be alive, and you will gain a new realization of life, an increase in life itself. Never allow yourself to come under the control of the I can't man. He believes in limitations, wraps his talent in them, and hides it away in the negative earth, and no increase is possible to him. Be positive in spirit, and you will succeed. All the negative talents that are buried away in the depths of material thought can be resurrected by spirit and made positive, put to the right use, contributing to the increase of your good. Appetite and passion, which are decreasing and destructive in the material, can be made increasing and constructive when directed to the things of spirit. Blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. If there's any lack apparent in man's world, it is because the requirements of the law of manifestation have not been met. This law is based on mind and its operation through thoughts and words. The key to the operation of mind is symbolically set forth in the Genesis account of the 6 days of creation. Man's mind goes through the identical steps in bringing an idea into manifestation. Between the perception of an idea and its manifestation, there are 6 definite positive movements, followed by a 7th day of rest, in which the mind relaxes and sees its work in process of fulfillment. In bringing forth the manifestation of God's abundant supply, take the first step by saying, let there be light. That is, let there be understanding. You must have a clear perception of the principle back of the proposition. God will provide. The one universal, eternal substance of God, which is the source of all, must be discerned and relied on, while dependence on material things must be eliminated from thought. So long as you depend on money alone, you are worshiping a false god and have not discerned the light. You must first enter into the understanding that God, omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, is the source, that you can draw on this source without limit. If you have established that light, you have begun your demonstration and can go to the second step. A firmament must be established. That is a firm place in the mind, a dividing of the true from the apparent. This is done through affirmation. As you affirm God as your supply and support, your words in due season become substance to you and substance of faith. I just want to stop there in, the omnis. Those got read off, and the fact is, most of the people that are participating with us on this know what those are. But I think even for the ones of us who know what they are, it's a really powerful step to stop and give it mind, because that's step one in whatever it is we're working on creating, that we're working with a power that is all knowing, all powerful, and everywhere equally present. So if what you need is in Timbuktu, that used to be the saying when I was a child, then whatever connections you need between you and there is there. I talked earlier on the example that Della Reese gave us in finding who became her husband of, I forget the exact number, around 35 years before she made her transition. And she was in Los Angeles working on a TV show. So she was kind of locked down in Los Angeles, and he was working for an advertising agency in Chicago. And so it wasn't an easy connection. And also, she said at the time that if you had asked her, and when she set out to say, okay, I'm ready to manifest that true life partner in my life, if you ask her in that moment, now give us the description. Remember, I said, if you're going to work on a house, start looking at what does it look like. At that time, her description was, he's about 6'2", and he's black as night. And if I run into him, it will be like hitting a wall because he will stand sturdy. And who she found was a man that was about 5'8" and light-skinned African-American and soft-spoken and sensitive and everything she needed in her life, because he was the greatest support of her, and they had an amazing partnership together. That was that place, but there were all the steps that put them in contact with each other that she couldn't have said, oh, I've got it. The I've got it was connecting to the omnis. The I've got it was whatever it is I need for what I'm ultimately saying I want, I'm in connection to. Now let's move forward with that belief, that understanding, and that expectation.
Mm-hmm. You flagged a couple things, and I think the pages that you've just read, like the first step is that understanding that God will provide. But you've talked about this before, and I think it's important to flag again. Like sometimes when we do the spiritual bypass, as we call it, or the metaphysical malpractice, we're like, oh, God's going to take care of that. The story with Della Reese, like, I'm going to just pray and affirm, and my man is just going to come. And it's like, no, the page before that, 81, it says conscious cooperation. And so part of that is like, how do you organize your life? How do you take both small and big steps to signal to the universe, like, I'm moving in that direction. I'm ready for this abundance. I'm ready for this prosperous life. Selling the big bed to get a smaller bed so that you're like, okay, I'm going to be cozier. Emptying out a drawer to be like, okay, or a couple drawers.
Yeah.
I just have one for them, so just one drawer. But a little tiny piece of the closet, the bedroom, spare bedroom closet. But
Right.
whatever. You're opening up. It's like we take these small things. If we make light of it sometimes, like it's not a big deal, but they really are important, because if we're committing to them, with that intention, the second step, affirmation, the steps become the affirmation. Like, I'm opening up this sacred space. I'm affirming it with my action, or I'm affirming it with my thought and action. And so all these little things, So again, I'll ask everyone, what are you wanting? How are you wanting to build abundance and prosperity in your life? And what are some of the small steps that you can take? Some of the really concrete actions that you can bring to bear and to be co-creating with the universe around this?
Absolutely. Yeah, because sometimes the question is like, all right, I want this. Fill in the blank to this. Then maybe start by being like, what is it about that that's appealing? Because maybe you don't want exactly that. When you start saying, well, what I want, like, all right, I'll use me. I'll be honest.
Go ahead, we're ready for that. True stories.
Yeah, I want a husband, right? I'm ready for a husband. Do I really want a husband? I kind of enjoy living alone, and I enjoy not asking anybody's opinion on how I decorate my house and where I put stuff. And And so I'm like, okay, what is it that I want? When I say I want a husband, what is it I really want? Like maybe I end up with an actual husband. Maybe I end up with a great, lovely next door neighbor that has their own house, but but it's like, then you start asking the questions. Well, I want that partnership. Well, I want that one person, that like I connect with in that really unique way. And then it's like, oh, what I want is that unique connection with life, And so where does that have to come from the way that I'm initially thinking? No, it'd still be cool if it does, but maybe that, it's like, so then you start saying, what is it I really want? Like when you start, it's like, well, it would be nice because, and then you start opening the door to get from, in Della's case, the really tall man of a certain complexion to a shorter man of a completely different complexion, because you opened yourself up to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's all up to each of us individually to get clear what it is we want to manifest and not attach too many to not be attached to what it looks like. If we're clear on that we to use Wally, your example, right? If we think that it has to look like this,
Mm-hmm.
and aren't clear on that, what we really want is we want companionship and support and the ability to be vulnerable with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Then you know what? We end up attracting people that match the physical description that we think we want.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't go well. Anybody ever been in a relationship that was like, ooh, they are hot, but it is not healthy? Maybe it's just me, but
Suddenly it went from hot to a hot mess,
Right, exactly. So get clear on what is the experience, because right, we manifest the experiences, right? And the experience happens within us. And if we're attached to what it looks like in the manifest world, we can miss our delivery. Our good is coming to us right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that it has to be in a specific looking package. This is not the car that's meant for me because it is not bright red with a sunroof.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Really, what you need is safe and reliable transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That gets good gas mileage because you have a commitment to save the planet.
Right. And if you start asking the question, well, why do you want the red convertible or the whatever? It's like, well, that part is about being attractive in this way to somebody. And it's like, okay, well, can that happen in other ways as well?
I'm just vibing with like a separate podcast or thing about prosperity and relationships. I don't know. I'm just feeling that right now, y'all.
Yeah. Look, one of the very first year I ever wrote did the burning bowl and then wrote the letter to God. And that was my first year in New Thought in a real way. And I learned watch your mouth because your words matter. Your words create things. And I made sure to craft this letter. I still have it somewhere. It was really written well, I thought, right? But I was new to Los Angeles and I was ready to have this successful acting career. And I said, I am going to air on television in places I don't even know about to ask, right? Because that I thought in terms of residuals, the further out you air, the more markets you're airing in, the more money's coming in. And I got a check for an episode of Guiding Light that I was a reporter on. I was an under five lines or less. And we aired in Australia. Well, I only know 3 cities in the entire country, And so I definitely aired in towns that I still don't know. The check was for 29 cents. Now, Now, everything I asked for in that letter actually happened. And yet I was like, that's not what I meant, you know? And so like there became this lesson of like, okay, here's the starting point, right? So that's kind of like what we're getting into. I love a step process. They're giving us 7 steps here. We got 2 of them already. Of like the let there be light, let there be this success is a great getting us focused in a direction. Now let's ask some more questions about it on what it is you're really looking for here. You know, I can tell you 29 cents is not what the intention was, but I didn't go that deep. So I instead I got a lifelong lesson about going a little deeper.
That serves you because it makes a great message when you have to talk about using this power of imagination, using your understanding, and being clear with your talk, right? What we say, what we're imagining.
That's it.
Funny that you mentioned burning bowl because I tell the story that my wife was born at the burning bowl. You know, my wife was sort of cooked up at the burning bowl 3 years before, and so I'll save that story for another episode, perhaps. But you know, this idea of being clear, like that was the first time that I was really clear about what the details were, and it wasn't like where they lived and what they look like. It was qualities, and I kept adding to it. She tells a funny story how when we met, and she did the same process. And I take out my list, and it was like the Dead Sea Scrolls, you know, like they're just coming out, you know, with this whole list because I worked it for like 2 years, like, and every time I was like adding to it, adding to it, adding to it, like really visioning it. And I tell you, she, you know, when she says, how did I stack up? Like everything that I asked for in that list, like she met. And so part of it is being clear, but getting back to what we talked about earlier, it's also being disciplined, like having the patience, having the persistence, having that faith, like, all right, I've been working this 2 years, like whatever. And then I just said, you know what? I'm going to put it aside. I've done everything with this. And then in that year 3 was when, you know, everything happened between she and I. And so testifying to the prosperity, you know, that these things do work. But, you know, it also is looking and doing our own internal work. You know, we had to do, both of us individually, our own internal work to be able to be open and receptive to a positive, non-toxic, you know, healthy relationship. So
Yeah. Christina, do you feel like reading these last 3 pages?
yeah, so we are on 84 now, third
84,
step.
the top of 84, yeah.
The third step is the forming of this substance into tangibility. Let the dry land appear. Out of the omnipresent substance, your mind forms whatever it wants by the power of imagination. If it is food you need, see yourself as bountifully supplied with food. If you have been already taken the other steps, you can picture in mind the things you desire and bring them into your manifest world. If the other steps of understanding and faith have not been taken first, there will of course be no demonstration, for above all, the creative law is orderly and works by progressive steps. Many people have tried to demonstrate by visualizing and concentrating and have failed because they have put the third step first. They have not developed understanding or faith. If you work according to the law, conforming to its orderly operation as revealed in the degrees of creation, you cannot fail, because when you have fulfilled the law, you have found the kingdom. Jesus recognized order as a fundamental factor in the law of increase. When he fed the multitude, he made them sit down in companies. If you study the story carefully, you will see that there was a great deal of preliminary preparation before the demonstration was made. There was a recognition of the seed ideas, the loaves and fishes carried by the small boy. There was a prayer of thanks for that supply, and then it was blessed. All this preceded the actual appearing and appropriation of the supply. Every demonstration is based on the same law of increase and goes through the same orderly steps. Pray, but let your prayer be affirmative, for that is the prayer of faith. A begging prayer filled with ifs is a prayer of doubt. Keep praying until affirmations become a habit of mind. The race thought of lack must be penetrated and so charged with the truth of God's omnipresent abundance that all consciousness of lack and poverty disappears from the face of the earth. The more we trust to the simplicity and infallibility of the law, the better will be our individual demonstration, the more we shall contribute to the transformation of the race thought that causes lack and famine. Those who make the greatest spiritual demonstration are not the wise of the world, but the obedient children of the law on the bosom of infinite love. Ooh, that's a good one. Those who make the greatest spiritual demonstration are not the wise of the world, but the obedient children of the law on the bosom of infinite love. See what you need as already manifest and as yours. Do not put it off to some uncertain future time. God wants you to have it now. Remember always God's omnipresence, and if doubts come in, do not entertain them. Say, I trust omnipotence. I refuse to be anxious about tomorrow or even the next minute. I know that God does not provide for the fulfillment of his divine ideas, and I am that divine idea. I know that God does provide for the fulfillment of his divine ideas, and I am that divine idea. This divine idea is the Son, the perfect man, the Christ, brought forth on the sixth day. If you would have your inheritance, you must not omit this sixth-day realization. God expresses himself as man and works through man to bring perfection into expression. To give up all anxiety and trust in the Lord does not mean to sit down and do nothing. My Father worketh even until now, and I work. We are to work as God works, to work with God as a son follows the occupation of his father. We are to form what God has created. In the first chapter of Genesis, we see how the Father works. The various steps in his method are clearly pointed out, and we shall have results only as we faithfully follow them. Some people think of prosperity as something separate from their spiritual experience outside the pale of religion. They live in two worlds. In one for 6 days of the week when man runs things, and in the other on the seventh day when God is given a chance to show what he can do. It is personality's demonstration when people find themselves complaining of hard times and depression, but it is not the way to demonstrate God in the fullness of all things. Do all things to the glory of God 7 days a week rather than one. Take God into all your affairs. Use this thought in the silence and bring God and his law of prosperity into your affairs. I trust thy universal law of prosperity in all my affairs. And so it is.
And so it
So
is.
it is. We've got powerful minds, people.
And if you have any question at all about what you are in, what your intention is, and what you're trying to manifest right now, look around. Look around, because the proof is right there. That's where we are. And if you're trying to manifest something greater, you you have to change the way you're thinking and become ready to receive.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I paused there for a second. I had an email that popped up on my screen and it distracted me. Does anybody ever get distracted and not get to manifest what they intend to?
No.
Does that ever happen?
Right? You're like, oh, shiny thing.
Right.
Yes.
So.
Indeed. All right. This is
So
another.
those of you who have questions, curiosities, confusions, please put them in the chat. We will make sure to be able to address them. all of these concepts are so important. Sometimes they can be a little bit dense. And so we want to give you all the opportunity to know that this is kind of an interactive opportunity that we'll be able to share and explore and co-create together.
Absolutely. And, as people watch this, you may get a basic idea that I really like to talk. And so please help me with that. Like, I want to have conversations with you all. Like, I'm having great conversations with Todd and Christina, but I want to have great conversations as we dig deeper into this all together. It is something that will bless us in our conversation, and it will bless people because it will live on places like YouTube and those sorts of places forever in some way that somebody else will pick it up when they just need it. So, let's have those conversations.
Yep.
So we'll see everybody next week.
See you then.
All right.